Hello and welcome to Obsessive Audio. This is Eric. We've got a great show for you today, a brand new plugin from Acustica Audio. This is Dove. And in Acustica Audio's own words, Dove is a dynamic harmonic compressor, suppressor / deharsher. And that's a mouthful. I had to do it like 18 times until I could remember it. What is that exactly? Well, it will take your audio, it will analyze all of the frequencies, and it will start to duck certain frequencies that are poking through certain resonances. The method is slightly different from other plugins on the market, well, considerably different from other plugins on the market, and it's Acustica's black box take on how to do these things. The plugin suite itself consists of, there's actually 8 plugins, but really there are 2 interfaces to look at here. And we've got the standard skeuomorphic Acustica analog style interface, which we've all come to know and love. And Acustica recently have been making the flat interface as well. Very attractive. And quite often I've been finding that the flat interface has a few more features up its sleeve that the analog one doesn't have. So I've been leaning towards these recently. And in terms of what family of processing this plugin belongs to, if you know Vox-Zenjo's TEOTE, never knew how to say that one, the Oak Sound Soothe, the De-essing from TB Pro Audio, even the old school DSM by Paul Frindle, Plugin Alliance. It's that type of spectral processor, but in this case, Acustica have kept to their roots of analog emulation, meaning that everything in it is analog emulated, including the sidechain filtration, which is pretty phenomenal, and we're going to hear the results. We're going to hear some examples of the plugin. And why don't we get to that actually right now? So along the top, you've got your preset management, load, save, A and the B, copy, paste. There are a number of presets to choose from to help you get started, find something that looks appropriate, and that will get you in the ballpark, and you can adjust from there. We've got different styles of reduction, and I can't stress enough how different these sound from each other. So once you've got it dialed in and you start switching these up, this is going to change the sound quite drastically. These are all based on their analog sampling and modeling. So they all operate very differently from each other. So hopefully you find one that does just the perfect job for what you're trying to do. There's a resolution which has normal, mega, and giga, and while the manual doesn't exactly specify what this is, whether this is bit depth or whatever, I notice a difference. This will increase the CPU load though significantly, so keep that in mind. But I've been liking mega. Giga I've tried too, and it'll take up quite a bit of CPU, but it is there for you. Now up here you've got your 3 standard compressor type controls: attack, release, reduction, which can be thought of as a threshold. As you increase it, it's going to dig in more. It's going to start removing more frequencies and at a higher amplitude of reduction, attack and release speeds. Up here, you've got your phase section. You turn this on, and this will enable you to slide between minimum phase or linear phase. And it will allow you to hit any point in between. So depending on whether you're mastering or if you have a track, this is an additional thing to play with. Now, linear phase EQs, of course, if you've got them set, the low end, sometimes you'll hear some pre-ringing in that. Now, the type of processing here, it doesn't really produce a lot of pre-ringing because this is only applied to what's being reduced rather than, say, the whole signal running through like a linear phase equalizer. So, but this will give you, if you do sense a little bit of ringing, you can tack that down a little bit, and that will help out a lot. Similarly, we have oversampling here up to 8 times, and the process itself doesn't really generate a ton of aliasing, but because it is nonlinear gain reduction, this is still a really good thing to have here. we've got down here input and output. Oh, I should mention size too as well. I forgot that. 1x, 1.5, 2x, you have to reload the plugin and then it'll open up at the new size. You've got master input here, master output there, gain reduction meters here. The flat version of the plugin has a little bit more in this section, some RMS, and that's pretty cool. This is where the main activity of selecting frequencies happens. Wet and dry mix. Stereo link or unlink, meaning that left or right could be unlinked, meaning they'll act independently. So if it detects a frequency in the left, it'll just duck the left and not hit the right. Or you can link them completely, meaning both sides will react the same way. And again, the beauty is you don't have to decide between the two. You can pick any point in between, which is great. Down here, similarly, you got an MS section. The default is left or right, so basic stereo processing. But let's say that you had a resonant guitar on the left side only, or the guitars are on the the left and the right side. You can put that all the way over to the side without and attack those resonances without affecting, say, the drums or the vocals. Very cool. Similarly, if there's something nasty in the vocals or the bass you want to remove, go over to affect only the mid information. And of course you can slide at any point in between. I love this. Makeup gain, self-explanatory, although I will say you should be using this makeup gain here rather than increasing the output of the plugin. And the reason for that is because of the delta listen function down here. Delta listen is you're only hearing the part that's being changed. And so when you click this on, if you're really trying to zone in on a certain thing that you're trying to get rid of, you can isolate that. And when you hear only the thing you're trying to get rid of and not the other things, then you know you've got some good settings. So this is pretty critical, especially for a plugin like this, I think. And again, the reason the makeup gain will be fine, but if you have this output at something other than 0, that's going to start bleeding into the delta listen, so you won't actually be hearing everything isolated. So my technique for this plugin, keep this one at 0, use this makeup gain, and we're going to hit the delta listen later. It's very cool. This whole section allows you to hear the left or right, the mid information only, the side information only, or just the changes you're making. Bypass right here, very convenient. Down here we've got 3 controls: range, smoothness, and selectivity. Range is like your maximum gain reduction. So let's say I have this set to like 3 or 4. And in theory, no matter what happens with the signal, that those frequencies will only be reduced by that amount, which of course you can increase all the way up. And I don't even think this is dB. I think this is a percent. So if you only need really subtle adjustments and you don't want it to be aggressive, keep this fairly low. And if you want extreme maximum reduction, crank that up. Or anywhere in between. I guess that's what knobs do. Selectivity is the number of bands. So we can go for a few number of bands, fairly coarse activity, or crank it up all the way to a resolution of 1/256 octaves. Bands. So, a graphic EQ is like 1/3 octave. If you crank the selectivity up all the way, that's 1/256th octave. That's thousands and thousands of bands. I'm not sure how many, but it's a lot. This also will increase your CPU load quite drastically. So that's also something to keep in mind. Smoothness over here affects the bandwidth and the amplitude of each of the individual bands. So if you bring smoothness up, that's going to make each band wider and more reactive. The frequencies, the adjacent frequencies will get ducked more. And if you decrease the smoothness, then it's going to start to become much more precise, where it's like, no, just this band's going to hit. And maybe a little on the adjacent bands, but no big wide areas of frequency are going to be effective. So for more precision, smoothness should be lower. And for more smoothness, higher. And did I miss anything on the plugin here? I think we've got it all down. That's great. Let's take a word from our sponsors. do some examples. I've got a de-esser example here, and I'm going to hit the bypass. So, I am trying to make a sibilant vocal. Let's hear that again. So, I am trying to make a sibilant vocal. Now, even though it's bypassed, you can still see what the action is. Let's unbypass it and listen. So, I am trying to make a sibilant vocal. Bypass. So, I am trying to make a sibilant vocal. Unbypass. So, I am trying to make a sibilant vocal. So it works really well, and you can see here I've got everything high-passed. It doesn't even start till around 2K, so I'm telling it, do not affect the stuff down here, only affect the stuff up here. And if I wanted to further zone in and on a frequency, I could take a bell curve. So I am trying to make a sibilant vocal. Let's say I heard something around 6K. Let's crank that up. So I am trying to make a sibilant vocal. Of course, you can use the scroll wheel or 2 fingers on a touchpad and make this wider or narrower. So I am trying to make a sibilant vocal. And that's basically how that one works. As I crank this up, it's going to reduce more in the areas. Because this is the sidechain, of course. This EQ here is affecting the sidechain. And this is all analog emulated too, which is fantastic. So we have that as a de-esser. Why don't we go and listen to a master track? I'm going to use this acoustic track that, actually, if you heard last week, if you saw the green episode, this is the same track. I picked it because it's very clean, it's very acoustic. It's almost all the way there, except that it does have a little bit of a problem I heard in the mid-range around between 5 and 800 hertz, which was just a little bit poking through. I'm going to bypass the plugin completely. Let's hear what the raw track. So not bad, but listen to the guitars and the piano. There's a little bit of a huh. And let's put the plug-in on. Let's go back to that part. Let's bypass it here. Listen to it bypass, and then I'm going to turn it on. Listen for the guitars, listen for the piano, listen for that kind of nasally frequency. And I'm going to turn it on. On. Off. On. Off. On. So it's a pretty subtle difference. Again, if you're on a laptop or a less than stellar listening environment, you might not be hearing too much of a difference, but it took care of the problem as far as I was concerned. I was able actually to make up the gain a little bit, and it doesn't seem to be any louder. It just seems to just have a little bit less of those frequencies that were being concerning. Let's try the delta listen now. I'll show you how that works, and also why you want to keep this output at 0. Now we're going to listen only to the frequencies that are being removed, right? Only the resonances that are being detected. And they're going to be fairly quiet. So I'm going to have to crank up the gain on the DAW. And if you're going to do this, I totally recommend having a brick wall limiter on your master just to protect your speakers, because this can, some of these resonances can get a bit jumpy depending on how you have the plugin set. So I'm going to crank that up, and let's listen to what's just being removed. Yeah, even with it cranked up, still not getting much. So let's increase that reduction until it starts to dig in a little more. And maybe what we want to do here is actually increase the range. Very interesting anyway. In this case, I didn't actually use the delta before, so I just set up where I wanted the frequencies gone. That's an interesting sound there. I wonder if I'm actually doing that properly or if there's something amiss. But let's. Here's why you don't put the output at anything other than 0, because even if you start to take it away, right? This is before the delta, right? So that's why you want to be using the makeup gain there. And we've got one more example, but what was I think the trick here is not to not to use too much.
It's too much. It's too much. Too much power. Too much glass. It's all too much. Too much.
Right, so we've got one more final example, and this is an example of sidechain spectral ducking. And I've got a drum beat and a bass. Right now, Dove, this is the flat GUI, by the way. The Dove is on the bass duck. And I'm going to bypass the plugin right now. Yep. Yeah, let's just hear the drums and the bass together. Oh, I'm sorry. I still have my DAW cranked. That's why you keep the limiter on, kids. All right. So I've got it set here. I'm going to solo it out. See if we can do a delta on this and see exactly what's being removed. Oh, it also helps if you earn and bypass. So this is what's being removed, which doesn't sound like it's a lot, but check out in the context of the song, bypassed and unbypassed. Here we go. Bypassed. On. Off. On. So I'm going to do that again. I just want you to listen for the kick drum, especially the bass, and what's happening down in the low end around 90, 100 hertz. And it sounds pretty good, bypass, but when you turn it on, just listen how the bass kind of hugs around the kick. All of a sudden the kick has some more space, and the bass has a bit more volume and a bit more presence. Off. So that's just something that I like to do. I've been using, up until this point, I think I've been using Sonable Smart Compressor to do this trick. It's a spectral ducking trick. It's you're side chaining your bass to the kick drum. This is in a full mix it would be just the kick. In this case, it's the drums are already mixed, so it's reacting to all of the drums. But in a real mix, this would be just off of the kick drum, just to help clean up that low end, to get rid of frequencies that are interfering. That's going to allow you to turn the bass up even that much more without the kick getting lost. It's a really cool trick. I love doing it. I try to do it on every mix. It doesn't always work, but it works about like 80% of the time, regardless of style. So that is something that this plugin can do, and it's doing it quite well. You'll see here I've got 100 hertz cranked right up, and I sort of, let's fool around with it. You can hear where it sort of locks in to the kick drum. Again, if you've got a full range system, you're going to hear this. Maybe not so much on a laptop or something, but right around there is where I felt it locked in. That kick drum, it's punching through that space. Anyway, good stuff. Dove from Acustica Audio. It's just released yesterday. Still at introductory pricing. Check it out. I think you will not be disappointed. If you don't have any plugins that do these kinds of functions, this would be a great first purchase in that area, because I've used this now on mastering. I've used it on a bunch of different things, and it does what it says on the tin, but it does it in style. It does it analog. Again, you've got all these different modes to play with. Wish we could spend more time on that, but I think that's probably good for now. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was entertaining and helpful. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Obsessive Audio.